if we have a clear picture of the outcome we're really looking for, then we're all smart enough to kind of work backwards and say, well, what do I intentionally need to do in order to get to that outcome of my dreams?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Amazing Marketing Show, where we try to make marketing discoveries through meaningful conversations. I'm Dmitri Smirnov, here with my co-host, Chris Gray. Chris, what's going on?
Dmitri, what up?
Well, you know what I'm going to say. Living the dream, baby. How are you?
Life is good. Even better that we have my fellow bald-headed twin here today.
It's hard being the prettiest person on this podcast, but I'm going to have to do what I have to do. A brother has to represent.
Yeah, we're so glad to have Todd on. And by the way, I'm headed right to where you guys are. I'm well on my way to baldhead, kind of hanging on to the last of it, but it is what it is.
You know, they say that's like being closer to God because there's less barrier between you and God. So we are holier than thou.
Well, you know what? I grew up kind of in a Jewish household, and I always thought the yarmulke was for covering the bald spot. That was kind of the joke going around. So. Yeah. Well, Todd, we're so glad to have you on. Chris, let's get into an intro.
Man, let's get straight into it. I've had the pleasure of befriending Todd over the last 2 years, and Todd is a mentor, a coach. He's been in marketing. He's been a pastor. He's a husband. He's a father. He's a man of God. There are so many titles to give Todd, and I've had the opportunity to, even though I met Todd in the business world, we've become close because of the way he lives and the way he carries himself. As Dmitri knows, we're in the marketing world. We're around a bunch of people who are successful in the worldly fashion of success. But when I think of success, it's much more than that. And Todd embodies that in so many ways. And I was recently on his show, Communication Breakthrough, and it's my favorite interview I've ever done, hands down. I talked about it last week, I believe. I'm not sure if we talked about it on the podcast, but I did talk about it last week, at least to you, Dmitri. It was the most emotional I've ever been live, and Todd brought that out of me. He brought change to my life, which was implemented today. Todd is the expert of experts. We're grateful to have you here, brother.
I absolutely love being here. And, you know, it's all about intentional living for me, because I think we get frustrated with life when we let life happen to us. But we're all naturally control freaks. But if we have a clear picture of the outcome we're really looking for, then we're all smart enough to kind of work backwards and say, well, what do I intentionally need to do in order to get to that outcome of my dreams?
Go ahead, Chris.
I fumbled earlier too, man. I want to make sure I'm very clear at this. Todd doesn't sit there and call himself an expert of experts. He's an expert at making experts, and it's because of what he just said. But we'll get more into that.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said about making experts. Not as easy as it sounds, and it could be a catchphrase. And what does it really mean, making experts? Todd, what does it really mean?
Well, it's all about intentional communication first and foremost. So what I've found is, as I've interviewed different people in different from 30 years in broadcasting, when you interview or talk to a professional speaker, let me go to the extreme side, the true expert, you're going to find they begin saying the same things, the same principles over and over and over again, but they've internalized them in such a way that they're able to adapt them to whatever situation they're in. So that pattern that works for that extreme expert can also work for anybody else. You just have to intentionally learn, well, what are my teaching principles? What is my communication method? How do I want to represent? What's the identity that I need to be in order to show up and show out in whatever situation I'm in? I tell people over and over again, and I'm an introvert, and no one believes me. It's because I've taken an intentional approach to when I'm in those public situations for how I want to portray. And then that expert of experts, it also goes into how do you relate to your client or another person going forth? Are you treating other people like an expert? And that's a coaching method. Because if you treat and you view that other person as an expert, then you're going to be curious. You're going to ask questions. You're going to toss the ball back to them instead of just being a blowhard and, and just giving a whole bunch of information. Because if we're at a cocktail party and you go in and you just start doing a whole bunch of talking, no one's going to want to talk to you. At everyone's core, they are selfish and they are about themselves. So if you make it about them, then all of a sudden you're the expert of their dreams.
Todd, when you said that to me last week about how people have this ethos, whatever it is, when they say it, they say it in different ways, but it's kind of always they have this core theme, but then they say it in different ways and are able to make it fit to various situations. It reminded me of a quote, which I'm going to butcher. It was a Japanese swordsman, Musashi, and he said something to the effect of, once you understand the way, or once you know the way, you see it in all things. And that's what I think of when you talk about having this core thing and being able to deliver it in different ways. So I guess my question to you is, somebody comes to you and they're like, "Hey, Todd, I don't know my message. I don't know what I'm about." Where would you start with that person?
Well, if it's true, whatever's true in work or whatever's true in other parts of your life are also true here in this situation. Virtually everything else you do, you have a playbook and you follow it. You have a playbook for your SOPs in your business. You have a playbook there's a playbook for opening up something you get from Amazon on how to use it. I believe that everyone needs a personal playbook where you have intentionally designed, what is the character I'm playing in each individual moment? Shakespeare said, we're all on a stage. Well, if we're all on a stage, then we need a character. And so you need within that playbook, what's the character I'm going to be playing? What's the identity, and who do I intentionally want to be? And if I can get real with you, because you and I talked about this on the episode, that begins even like with what Stephen Covey challenged everyone with in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, back in the 90s with, have you written the words you want on your gravestone? If you begin with the end in mind, you know how you want to act now. So it even gets that in depth. So with this playbook, who's the character you want to be? What is your intentional message? What are your teaching points? I was a pastor for 10 years. What's your 3-point sermon that you want to come up with and you could spout off at any point, at any given moment, regardless of whatever question anyone comes to? What is going to be your response? So I'm this little introvert, and I'm now hosting a television show that gets 1 million viewers every single week. How is this little introvert able to do this? And no one believes I'm an introvert. It's because I have a 2-step method involved with it. One, this is so ridiculous. I explained this to someone yesterday, and I had social anxiety as a teenager. And I wanted to be one of the cool. My brother was one of the cool kids. He was one of the popular kids, and I was 5 years younger than him. All the ladies loved him, and and I wanted to be one of those cool kids. But I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to dance. I thought I needed this script on how to dance. I didn't know how to be one of the cool kids. And this is so. You have permission to laugh at me here. But back in the 90s, because yes, I am older than I look, but I do moisturize. So back in the 90s,
we can tell, Todd.
Thank you.
Skin looks phenomenal.
Thank you very much. I do have that natural soul glow. And I just referenced where I got that quote from. But anyway, so back in the 90s, there was a Bonnie Raitt song. I wasn't even a Bonnie Raitt fan. I made fun of. She had this hair that had this gray streak from. I couldn't name any of her other songs, but she had this one song that said, "Let's give them something to talk about.
Yeah.
Let's give them something to figure out." So something clicked when I was a teenager that, well, you know what? When I'm in those moments, I'm going to do something and say something crazy that people go, wait, what that mofo just do? And so see there, it just naturally comes out of me. I can't control my mouth a lot of times. That's an introvert doing that. So that at play. But then how did I get on a television show when I'm an introvert? Because an introvert needs to plan everything out ahead of time because he freaks out if he doesn't know the question that's coming. I started learning improv. And I learned the principle of dancing in the moment. I learned the principle of yes and whatever happens, yes, I agree, and I go with the flow. So whatever question someone comes, this is where the playbook is coming back. Whatever question someone asks me, I say yes, and I pull one of those principles that I've already pre-designed off the shelf, and I bring it into the conversation. I never disagree with anything anybody says. I say yes, and this is also true, and I lay that out in front of them.
It sounds like that through the difficulty you might have had in your childhood, especially compared to your brother growing up, you had to figure out a way, whereas some people had it come naturally to them maybe. And maybe that's even a disadvantage, and we can talk about that and see what you think about that. But how long did that take you, and how was that process really from like an emotional perspective?
Well, I've seen it play out in different stages, and really, in the last few years, it's all come together. Because here's the plight that every single one of us go through. We'll go through a stage, a season of life, and we're like, why God? Why is this happening to me? All the whys that we want to shower in, and we think we just don't understand the moment as much. Because here's the reality is we don't need to understand the moment as much. We just need to walk through it the best we possibly can. Because at some point, that strange look, have you ever noticed how strange looking puzzle pieces are? I mean, they're goofy shapes. They don't make any sense. You hold one up, you go, why is it shaped this way? It's because it's part of a puzzle. It's all going to fit together at some point. And so that's what a lot of this has been part of. With 30 years in television, in sports broadcasting, I just saw different elements of it. I saw the intentionality of many of the athletes on the field. How does a hero rise? Well, they rise in a specific pattern in specific moments. How do those commentators, what role are they playing in specific moments? And so you see all of these patterns at play. One of my favorite quotes is by the guy who developed the flatbed scanner. And he said, all invention is a matter of pattern recognition. And when I heard that back in college many years ago, it's like the light bulbs set on, and I began this mission of looking for patterns in life. And so now, even like Chris, we discovered in the show, in my episode we recognized a pattern at play, and then we just applied it into another area. Mm. And so it's all about pattern recognition. So when I worked for the Dallas Cowboys, that's when Instagram was new, and this brand new thing they called hashtags was invented, and they asked us to get Instagram names. And I was an older guy getting an Instagram at that point, which at that point it was young, because all this stuff starts with college students and young people, and then it grows in and gets old once the people like me actually adopt it. But and they said, so we want you as a camera operator on the sideline to get an Instagram name and show clips of you and take pictures on the sideline, but do hashtag Cowboys Nation. And so started doing that, and that developed a character called TV Toad, which had his own dance on the sideline. I'd walk on the sideline of these Cowboy games, and people would yell my Instagram name from the stands. And I was like a mini personality that honestly the Cowboys had to quiet down just a little bit. And I had some intense conversations. There were some, just like you remember the Michael Irvin rules that shaped all of the NFL. Well, there's some TV Toad rules that shape the Dallas Cowboys, and specifically how they're allowed to talk to the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. But anyway, handsome does what handsome does.
I want to, Todd, you said something a while ago about how you take existing patterns and apply them to something else. So it just occurred to me. I want to give an example of what Todd did with me on the last episode. Here's an example. I have weekly meetings with the key employees in my company, weekly meetings, and they have a structure. And one of the things that came out of that was, that's helped me be successful. So Todd was like, hey, how can you take that and apply it to your personal life? Hence with my wife, how can I have weekly meetings with her that have structure? And I was like, boom, a light bulb went off. So Todd, is it fair to say that that's an example of what you were talking about a while ago?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's this principle, if it's true there, then it's true here. And that's the pattern you're always looking for in many different situations. I do speaking coaching as well. And I was sitting with a client today, and she has to give herself she has an interview next week, and she's normally very quiet, introvert, and so she's like, I said, should we write you a pitch for next week? She goes, oh, you could see on her face the dread, and I just said, no, okay, so the fear with a pitch is you're worried that the words are going to come out weird. So tell me, when you go to the grocery store and you're just talking to people normal, do people say you talk weird and your words don't come out? They go, well, no. Well, okay, when you're in the neighborhood, let's say, and you're talking to the neighbors and, and you're just talking about different, do you stumble over your words and you just like, people like, we don't understand what this girl is saying. Well, no. Okay, well, you're with your husband. Surely when you talk to your husband, you just stumble all over your words and you just can't talk clearly. She goes, you're being ridiculous. No. So is it fair to say you know how to talk clearly? Well, yeah. Okay. All we need to do is give you a framework to walk through. Okay, you're right. And we talked through the framework and she nailed her pitch within 30 minutes. She just needed a simple pattern to be able to follow of talking about the problem, talking about what's at stake, and then the solution that she provides. She invented a method in the moment of how she solves these problems. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful moment to witness, because she already recognized she's already good at communicating. So why think she's going to be bad somewhere else? We just had to apply that method into a different place, because that method she created for the pitch, I said, would it be fair to say that that's how you operate your household? She goes, yeah, it's like instinctual. Yeah, so don't you think it's going to be instinctual for you to communicate this way? She goes, yes.
Man, it comes out more genuinely that way.
It does. It does. It does. The things that we call obstacles, nothing is new on this planet. I mean, the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon says, it's vanity, vanity, vanity. Nothing is new on this planet. Everything we've all seen this thing over and over and over again. So if I understand that nothing is new, then I just need to figure out where that path has played out before and how I can apply it to this situation. It may mean I haven't experienced it before, but Dmitri, you probably have. That's where mentors and learning from other people come into play. And so how have you handled this? Oh, so it's like, okay. And then you see the dots begin to connect.
Now, Todd, being a pastor, and you mentioned a line there from scripture, from the Bible, how has that affected your business, your personal life, and your coaching?
It's affected a number of things, because one, it's the core of who I am, and you can't change the core of who you are. So I'm very clear with where I rely. I look with expectancy. So my version of faith Isn't I'm trying to look holier than anyone else. My version of faith, I believe, is a scriptural model, which is I believe that God is bigger than me or any moment that I'm in. And if it's he provides a guarantee or a promise that I need to stand upon. And I'm going to take action to stand on that warranty, guarantee, or promise. And that's actually the literal definition, the Greek definition of the word faith, by the way. And so, based off that foundation, that promise, that means I live a life where I'm looking in expectancy of the next outcome of what is, I believe in what is God going to do next. And so if God's going to do that next, then I need to stay within that promise and actively pursuing that next expectancy. Now, here's the next area that it's affected me is it lays out communication very clearly. There's a series of what I call power phrases or power transitions in Scripture that we can use in our day-to-day communication. One of those is the word therefore. Biblical scholars will say anytime you see the word therefore, you say, well, what is it there for? Okay, so meaning there is a situation, the word therefore, and then an antidote for that situation. I just laid out a communication model for you if you don't realize it. So you need to explain something. Well, define the situation that's at hand. Therefore, we must do this. Then one of my other favorite words is one of the most powerful words in Scripture. I think it's the word nevertheless. And if I can give you a little context, so in Scripture it says that just the day before, or the week before Jesus was crucified, it says he was in this place called the Garden of Gethsemane. And it said that he was under so much stress, and scholars say that was the moment that the sin of man fell on him. It said he was under so much stress that he began to sweat blood. I mean, pretty dang stressful moment. I've gotten hives from stress before, but never to the point and there is a medical condition where you begin to sweat blood. It described that's the moment he was in. And then it dictates where he had this prayer, and he said, Father, if there's any way that this cup can be taken from me, please take it. Nevertheless, not my will be done, but yours. Now, how often have we been in that situation where we're feeling one thing, but we have to trigger in our minds a switch from what we're feeling to what we know without a shadow of a doubt we have to go do? And the thing I love about that, nevertheless, if I can go into preacher mode for a second, by him saying nevertheless, he established through the redemption of the cross and making our sin go away so that we will never be the less again. He obliterated the identity of us ever being less again by saying nevertheless.
Todd, what I appreciate about men like you, my business partner, the Rachel Millers of the world, which we all three know, is you're here in the South with me in Texas, and it's the Bible Belt down here, right? I used to be a legalistic Christian. I don't consider myself a Christian now, but there's a connection with God, and I am surrounded by Christians. My gym, 413, Philippians 4:13. It's a Christian jiu-jitsu gym. I am surrounded by men and women who walk it like they talk it. But here's where I'm going to go with this. There's men like you and women like you who Christianity is a part of them. Like, it's not like you're not sitting here on here just trying to preach and vent. Like, this is just, if you're going to be around Todd is a Christian, and it's going to show. Whereas there's other Christians, a lot of them here in Texas, who they'll wear a cross and that is it.
Mm-hmm.
They'll say they're Christian. That them wearing the cross, that is all I see. That's the closest thing to Christianity I see. So help people like me understand what is the difference between someone like you who lives it and walks it versus the majority of the people that are around me who don't. What's the difference there?
Like you said, it's the Bible belt, and a belt can either hold you up, or like in Texas, it can be that big rodeo buckle that'll slap you across the freaking face.
Mm-hmm.
It comes down to there's truth and there's falsehood. There's faith and there's non-faith. It comes down to the definition of faith that I gave you a minute ago. What is that person really resting in? If that person is resting in their public appearance, that's not faith. That's self-reliance. If that person is resting in, I believe that his death on the cross and the resurrection wiped away my sin, and I'm not standing here as someone who's trying to show you a polished version of the turd that I actually am. I'm fine with the fact that I'm a turd, but I'm made righteous by faith, not because I've shown you an insulated version of myself. I don't care about the insulated version. I'm 100% radically convinced that this righteousness that he's offering is given to us. I don't earn it. Scripture says we don't earn it. So it's recognizing if I'm a non-faith believer, then I'm operating in a place where I need to earn something. If I need to earn something, then I'm just like anybody in business, meaning I'm in competition with the people around me, and it's all about one leg up on this person versus that person. So the real key is finding genuine believers, because Scripture is also clear. There's sheep and the goats is what it says. There's going to be true believers and there's going to be non-true believers. There's going to be some that just, they just like the social group, but they don't recognize what real faith is. Real faith is scary. Real faith is I can't see what's right there, but I believe it's there. Therefore, I'm going to place my foot on it. And it's Indiana Jones in that invisible bridge where there's enough crumbs that you're going to gingerly put your foot on it. And those people that are doing that. And that's the people you surround yourself with. The other people, you just nod and smile back and go, you're just like anybody else. That's okay. That's true in business. That's true anywhere else. Yes, the church is full of hypocrisy, but the Scripture's not. God's not. And when you see genuine, it's true. When you go to the grocery store and you find that food that's genuine, it's genuine, and you just eat more of that. But when you find the false stuff, you go, oh, this is like gross in my mouth. I want to spit it out. Now, I say it that way because the last book of the Bible, Jesus says, those of you that are just faking it, it's going to be like something in my mouth that I just have to spit out. So when you identify those people, brother, you did a good job. There's nothing wrong with that. And that doesn't mean the church is broken. It just means people are people, and some operate in faith and some don't. It doesn't mean the belief is broken. It means some people just haven't stepped into faith yet.
Todd, one of the things we love doing on this podcast is finding parallels between business life, marketing life, and personal life, and so forth. Even the catchphrase that we've had for a while was that marketing is in everything and everything is marketing. And in the conversations I'm hearing from you, I mean, from obstacles is kind of the same thing as objections. And therefore, to me, that sounds a lot like a marketing term, because in marketing, we're trying to show a problem, explain a solution. It's kind of,
that's right.
It's quite similar. And I want you to kind of take this question and run with it. And how do you see all these parallels working together between the business world, your coaching world, your Christian world, and so forth?
Mm.
I think it was George Bernard Shaw. It said, I'm going to butcher the quote, but he said something along the lines of, the greatest illusion in communication is the belief that it occurred. And so all marketing, everything in our world comes down to our belief that we communicated, bad marketing, or when we actually communicate, converted sale.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything comes down to how are we intentionally communicating, and then the feedback, because communication is a feedback loop. So you recognize that in marketing. Is this ad getting the outcome that we're needing? Yes, we've got traffic on the website, but is it the right traffic? Are we talking to the right people? I don't care how many people go to my website. I'm looking for the right people. Seth Godin was one who really shaped me on that. He said, you're not looking for everybody. You're just looking for some. So the encouragement is just like a magnet. A magnet both pushes and pulls people away. I need to push as many people away as I pull towards me. And like Seth Godin said, I'm looking for some. So that's 100% okay to do that. If I go wishy-washy, worried about I'm going to hurt somebody's feelings, then the person that does need what I have isn't going to know clear enough that I have what they can solve. So like Donald Miller says, it's the brain only has so many calories to burn. Therefore, they want to know. He says, if you confuse, you lose. So it's the product that gets there the quickest, not the best product, but it's the product who communicates the clearest, the quickest, that wins.
I want to, speaking of this marketing hat that you have, like I said at the beginning of the episode, you've worn many hats throughout your life. And so if I can use an analogy of a vehicle, let's say you've driven all these different vehicles. It could have been a truck, it could have been a Ferrari, it could have been a whatever. And you're driving all these different vehicles in your life. Now you're in a vehicle that you're like, this is a good fit. I don't care what anybody else around me thinks about this vehicle or what's going on. This is my car. I know where I'm headed. Tell me more about that journey and the advice you would give to people to find out what their best fit is.
The first thing that comes to mind is be patient with the process. And those puzzle pieces that look awkward, you like, why does this look and shape this way? If I believe that each puzzle piece is part of a larger puzzle, then I'm going to be patient with the process. If I believe that on the opposite, that each puzzle piece is its own standalone destination in itself, then I'm going to get angry, confused, and lost. And I'm going to toss that piece. And then when I need it later, I'm like, oh, that perfect piece, it must have fallen off the table. It's all about how I believe and I see those moments. I was always a guy that people wanted on the bus because I'm likable. But struggling to find the right seat has always been a struggle. And it's always been, this one fits just a little bit, just like the story of the three bears, it's just something was always just a little bit off, so I've had like 3 different careers all in one lifespan. I've been in broadcasting for 30 years, pastor for 10 years, grew an insurance agency and sold it, got a marketing franchise, sold it. So the interesting part was each one of those little elements was just one little piece of the larger puzzle. And at times I did get frustrated with the process. So like, I just never felt found. But now I came into the position I'm in now. Again, I believe that God shapes moments. Part of the grief I felt at one stage in my life, I hid for 10 years. And I felt like I wasn't worthy for this world. I'm clearly a failure. I can run a business and sell it, but I'm not worthy of having a public voice. I felt disqualified for a long, long, long time. And And I had this moment where I went to a men's conference, and just through the message and someone just caring enough to see me, honestly, I buried my head into another man's chest that represented my dad and my heavenly father in the moment. And I just wept. And I grieved and I let go of all that stuff that was just weighing me down. And I said, God, if you're going to do anything, you've got to do it. I can't create anything. You're the creator. I need you to create. And from that beginning, he began giving me the bravery to begin stepping out a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And so now that brought me into a personal development role. That's a very rare role in corporate environment, but I've been changing people's lives. And it's allowed all of these little pieces that look strange in the moment, but now I can come in, I can speak to the executive of a company because I've been there. I can speak to the creative in the creative department because I've been there, and allowed this coaching process that that honestly I was trained in 15 years ago, but my ex-wife now said, "Hey, you've been in nonprofit work for 10 years. You're literally nonprofit. Go get a job at Starbucks." There went my manhood, and I hid for 10 years. I didn't feel worthy, but God brought me out. There's both a song and a passage in the scripture that says He leaves the 99 in the herd to go after the one that's lost. That was me. He cared enough to come after me. He cared enough to bring those pieces together. And Chris, there's a reason you're surrounded by genuine believers, because though that Bible belt buckle that hits you across the face, the genuine believers are the key to healing that. Because faith, when it's real, is evident. So I'm finally not just a guy on the bus, but I'm a guy in the right seat. I've been designed for the moment that I'm in. And people keep saying now, boy, this is who you are. I go, yeah, I've been saying that for years, but just it wasn't the right time. But now is the time. Now is the time to rise.
Todd, you found who you are in that way, in a kind of a hero's arc journey way.
Absolutely.
Where you were down and then you found your way up with the help of God, but also your own bravery and your own initiative. And I want to bring this back to your coaching program, because I'm sure a lot of people are either thinking the same thing or they're in the same place as you are, especially business owners that are having a problem with marketing. They're having a problem with their personal finances, and they can't speak about it. They don't have that framework set up that you teach. And there's got to be a lot of objections, and maybe similar objections that you had going in your life. And maybe they're not finding, let's say, God in the same way that you are, but how can you in your coaching practice help them along the way to get that courage, to be the magnet and kind of step on some toes here and there, but at the same time find their place?
Everything comes down to intentional, authentic communication. And especially when you think about marketing, it's a conversation. It's the digital world. It's a digital conversation that's actually taking place. The common business person thinks, I need my website to rank. If my website's not ranking, then I must be failing. Well, yeah, there may be a whole bunch of yahoos that go and see your site when they pull something up, but you're looking for the right person. So it's as if, in fact, I'm speaking at the end of the month, and one of the things I'm going to be speaking on is I'm be speaking to a group of contractors, and I said, now you've got something you can, let's say you're the person who needs something fixed, and you look out in the foyer over there and you see about 10, 15 people, and you walk out there and they all are engaging in conversation with you in different ways, and you're going to connect with the one that connects to you. There's a direct conversation because there's a specific audience that there's a destination of every message that needs to go out. Having a conversation with someone in our fulfillment department, we were talking about different websites, and they brought up this one website. It was by a photographer, and the voice was really cynical, and it was like this almost a negative voice. And one person in the room who she was trained in advertising and advertising principles, and she talked about, you never want to talk in negatives with a brand. I said, yeah, that's true principle. However, that person who did that website, that photographer, they know their audience. What if that particular audience is a cynical group of people? The business owner knows that. They know the people that they're talking to. So often in digital marketing, we'll say, okay, I'm gonna do a website for roofers because all roofers are the same. No, they're not, because they all have different customers. They all connect and have a different type of conversation with that customer. They all connect with different people. So what is that profile of that end customer? What is it really like? And if you were talking face to face with them, how would you talk? Okay, now I need to work backwards. I need to build intentional communication that talks not to a million people, but to that person. Because that person has unique hurts, feelings, logical objections that I can speak directly to that type of person. Every community you go to has a different type of person. Speak to that community. Speak to that person.
Todd, as we're winding down here, before we go, I wanted to say one last thing to Dmitri. But I want to ask you this question, Todd. Mm-hmm. You're in the right seat. You're working on some things. These are the things that light you up and bring you joy. I know you're on a project. You have the Communication Breakdown show. Please, everybody, check that out. Todd, you can talk more about where they can find you, but also you're working on something called the Communication Makeover. Mm-hmm. So will you tell us about your current project as well as your future project?
I believe not only that everyone needs a playbook, a personal playbook, but I think everyone needs a communication coach, because everything comes down to communication. Everything in our lives comes down to how you communicate. And it's not so much, so many consultants call themselves coaches, but a coaching process puts the authority on the other person in front of you. So you know your situation better than I ever will. So we apply an intentional breakthrough method that we've created to create awareness through coaching, discovery of what might be possible, and a clarity around what is the outcome you're really looking for. Because once you're really clear, then you can set a path, and then you can circle back and get feedback on that path and continually refine your process. The answer to anybody's question is always right in front of them. So what a coach does is they takes that information that's blocking their eyes, pulls it out in front of them to where they can see it. And it's always like, oh, now I see. It's right there. It was, because here's the truth. It was right there the whole time. And so in Communication Makeover, we're not coming in and saying, oh, you need to see X, Y, Z, 1, 2. No, you already know your answer. We're just going to guide you through the process of becoming aware, discovering, and setting a clear path for what's blocking you in your communication. Because a true coach is never going to say, do this, but they may pull something like pulling a pretty dress off of the rack at the mall and say, now, does this fit? Oh, it doesn't. How would you change it? And they always toss it back to that other person, because what you own is what you will implement. What you design is what you will use. So there's a million people that have talked into your life. What comes down to, what do you choose? So a real coach puts you in the driver's seat so that you choose your path.
One more thing before you sign us off, Dmitri. And speaking of choosing your path, a while ago we were talking about how I am fortunate enough to be surrounded by Christians who walk it like they talk it. And do we agree on everything? No, but God is in them. I see it. I have a Mormon friend. Do we agree on everything? Absolutely not. But God is in him. I see it. Dmitri, you're one of the people that I've been surrounded by in the last 2 years where I don't know where you stand, but I see it in you, in your life. I see it. And one of the things that highlighted that for me, Dmitri, was yesterday. There's a guy named, we know Rachel Miller, all three of us. She's been on the show. She lives in my area. There's a guy named Jason Fladlin who flew in. He's in Dallas doing a conference. Jason, if you guys know who Alex Hormozi is, Alex Hormozi quotes Jason in his books. He's the most quoted guy. Jason's a very smart individual. Dmitri works with Rachel, like professionally works with her, indirectly does work with Jason. I was in there with them talking, and Dimitri's name came up. And it was the way they talked about you, Dmitri, behind closed doors. And Rachel knows we're close. I don't know if Jason knows how close we are, but Rachel knows. But anyways, the way they were both talking about you lit me up with joy, because that shows you and your integrity, because I see it in you. And so I am surrounded by great people, even in this podcast, just surrounded by great people. And I am, when I see it echoed from others, it brings me joy. So shout out to Dmitri for just being you, bro.
Well, Chris, what can I say to that? Thank you for telling me that. It warms my heart, and I feel the same way about you, Chris, in so many ways. And I probably don't have enough time to really cover that, but I'm sure we will in a future episode. But Todd, I have a whole page of notes here that I took for me personally that I'm going to take back and look at this. One of my favorite things was actually understanding what a coach is. Like even in sports, and you worked with the Dallas Cowboys, coaches come and go all the time, but some coaches stay. Like, well,
Yeah.
even at the highest level, why is it in the NFL that the average life cycle of a coach is like 3 years or less or something? But you have your Bill Belichick's, you have your coach of the Steelers, some of these people who are around for years, and I have a suspicion that they are the ones who actually get the best from their players and their organizations by pulling it out of them, not just setting something, do it my way, and no matter what, it's going to have to be this. They're probably pulling out, like you're outlining, the way that you do it with your clients.
Absolutely. And there is a distinction between an athletic coach and a International Coaching Federation coaching method, questioning. But you'll notice with Belichick, people always say the New England way or the Belichick way. There's a method to it. Okay. And it is, there's sternness to that. But what that highlights is there's a principle at play, and then he trusts people to execute it. So he's not standing on top of people. He said, hey, this is our identity. This is who we are. Chris, I don't know if you've ever heard me say this or not before, but this is who we are and this is what we do. Anytime in any organization you establish this is who we are and this is what we do, whether it's your family or your corporate world, that's what shapes behavior. There's a Harvard business study that said, we make decisions based off of, a person like me would do that. Yeah. So identity is the key factor. So the coaches who stay are the ones, this is the Steelers way. Tomlin, he stayed there forever. Belichick, that's the Belichick way. Cowboys, wait, you're right. We haven't won in 40 years because there's no longer a Cowboys way. There used to be one under Landry. There used to be one under, so there used to be a Cowboys way. There's no longer a Cowboys way. Therefore, there's a revolving door. So you have to establish an identity. This is who we are, and this is what we do.
Now, I'm going to have to recommend to all the listeners, and we have a lot of business owners, is to reach out to Todd and at least have a conversation about what he can do, because you're probably missing out on a lot of the potential that you have inside of you, and you need somebody who's a professional to bring it out of you. Just like in sports or whatever I'm sure people in the coaching world know exactly what you're talking about as far as the International Federation and that stuff. But let's have them reach out to you. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Business terms, just straight up on LinkedIn. You can find me at Todd Wall, or I think it even lists me as that TV Toad character. I was trying to roll with that for a little while, but yeah, you can find me as TV Toad or Todd Wall on LinkedIn. You know, a nice business conversation. That's probably the best way is LinkedIn.
Okay, well, we're going to include all the links to the LinkedIn, to any of the socials, to the show that you run, which, by the way, as Todd said, gets 1 million listeners. I mean, we throw around numbers all the time. 1 million people watching the program. Todd's got quite a bit of important things to say, as you heard on this podcast. So we're so glad to have you, Chris. Is there anything else you want to add before we sign off?
Oh, nothing that hasn't already been said. I'm so happy to have you here, Todd. Appreciate you, brother.
I love you guys. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation.
Likewise, Todd. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Peace.
Peace.